Okay, it looks like we are live. Welcome to Standing for Truth. I am your host, Donnie, and I want to thank everybody for being here for the next chapter in our 2022 Evolution Debate Challenge series. There has been a lot of hype and excitement for this specific debate. Wade the Wizard and Dr. Dino have battled it out before. And this is their much anticipated rematch. Gentlemen, Dr. Dino and Wade the Wizard, thank you so much for giving us your time for tonight's debate.
Thank you. Oh, is Kent's mic working? Can you hear me?
Oh,
there we go. My fault. Okay, yes. Hello. Good to be here again, brother.
No worries, brother. No worries. Everything's good. And real quick, everybody in the audience probably just noticed we have a poll for this debate. So currently send in your votes. And after the debate, we'll have another one, I guess, and see if evolution was more convincing than at the start of this debate. Okay, why don't we kind of break the ice a little bit before we get into the fun, get to know the debaters a little bit. Wade the Wizard, since it's been a little while since you've been on the platform, why don't we start with you? How you been, a little bit about yourself, and a little bit about your channel.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Life's good. Some of my fellow apes drive me crazy. I'm prepared this time. I got my dinosaur tie. Can you see that? So I'm all business. But you know, the thing is, there's no humans on this tie, just dinosaurs. Yeah, I guess that's about all for me.
I like it. I like it. I appreciate the sense of humor there, Wade the Wizard. And Kent, good to have you again. How you been? What's going on? And a little bit about Dal.
Well, I'm Kent Hovind. I've been great. God's been good. Like some of God's kids drive me nuts, but God's good. We have Dinosaur Adventureland in Lenox, Alabama. I give tours all the time, 140 acres. We have all kinds of science lessons that give God the glory for his creation instead of the stupid evolution religion. I think evolution's got to be the dumbest and most dangerous religious cult ever come up with in the history of humanity. Teach kids they come from a rock and teach them they're an ape and wonder why do they act like animals? Duh. Not a mystery to me. So I enjoy this. I want to set the record straight. We believe the Bible is absolutely true. God made it all in 6 days, about 6,000 years ago, and we'll defend that position.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, Kent. I appreciate the introductions from the both of you. Okay, so for the audience sake, tonight is going to be free-flowing. We're going to have short opening statements. Wade the Wizard is the affirmative today as evolution is on trial. So he is going to kick us off with anywhere between 7 and 10 minutes for an opening statement. We'll have a roughly, let's say, 6-minute rebuttal. And then we are going to just have a free-flowing organic conversation where the debaters, Kent and Wade, will be discussing the topic, evolution on trial. Okay, let's get right into it. Wade the Wizard, we're going to hand it over to you. Yeah, go ahead.
Before we begin, do we have any results on that poll beforehand?
So for the poll, let's see here. We've got is biological evolution convincing? We've got 88% say no, 12% say yes. So currently the majority is saying no. And everybody in the chat, make sure you send in your vote, and we'll see if that changes after the debate. We'll see if either Wade or Kent are converted. So those are the results so far, Wade.
It was 80 and 20 about?
Yeah, to be exact, 88% said no to evolution being convincing, and 12% said yes.
All right. My work cut out for me. Sorry. Well, I've got my dog. My dog's crying a little bit, but my girlfriend should be here in a second to console her.
No worries. No worries. We can't even really hear anything. So whenever you're ready, Wade, it's your opening statement. So if you need to share screen, anything like that, let me know. And whatever time you take, we'll give Kent equal time.
I'm just going to pull up timer, kind of gauge myself here.
There we go.
Oh, whoops. I don't need that. There we go. Okay, well, so before I begin, I just want to emphasize that I'm going to be taking the position of the majority of people who believe in God, but also believe that God created us through evolution. So the universe, God did it. Earth, God did it. Creation of life, God did it. Okay, so creation versus evolution. Here we go. This is the Wizard Show. We're going to whack a theist. This, we here at the Wizard Show, we believe the Bible is not true and scientifically inaccurate. Life evolved, and Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Dinosaurs never lived with man. We believe the creation theory is the dumbest and most dangerous religious cult in the history of the world. It's a mental illness. Now, I'm only joking, but if you found offense of this, perhaps you should reevaluate your own introductions. All right, so looking back, when I was Mormon, I grew up in the Mormon church. I used to believe that God made everything 4.5 billion years ago, and that Mormonism was true. After I served my mission, I had a friend come up to me and say, he left the church and he told me, Mormonism is not true. Unfortunately, I did not listen. I was blinded with confirmation bias. Sometime after that, I had another friend and his wife both leave the church, and they told me that Mormonism is not true. And once again, I was blinded with a confirmation bias. It wasn't until I understood the value of skepticism and I recognized my own confirmation bias that, I did unbiased research, which means I'm looking at both sides of the story. I'm looking at, is Mormonism true? Is Mormonism false? And I came to the conclusion myself that Mormonism is not true, and I changed my mind. Let's look at Dr. Dino here. He believes that God made everything 6,000 years ago, and that evolution is false. There have been a lot of very intelligent people present very convincing evidence to Dr. Dino saying that evolution is true. But as we can see time and time again, he is blinded with confirmation bias and he does not believe it. We also have, this was a survey 2018, 98% of scientists telling Dr. Dino that evolution is true. Once again, he is blinded with confirmation bias. He does not listen. That's because you can lead a horse to evidence, but you can't make them think. They have to do it on their own. One of my favorite quotes, it's amazing to discover that you're wrong. In fact, it's liberating. It's not a threat. It opens your mind. And this is what helped me liberate myself from Mormonism and free my thought process. Okay, so let's look at the scientific approach to this. The strength, we got SpongeBob here. I know you love SpongeBob. The strength of science is skepticism, while the weakness of science is confirmation bias. It is, I just know I'm right because a book says a thing. So yeah, looking back at the scientific approach, the scientific consensus used to be the Earth is flat until someone came along and said, here's some evidence, Earth is round. And what did they do? They rejected the old and accepted the new. Sometime later, the general scientific consensus was that God created life until someone came along and presented evidence that life evolves. Once again, science updated its consensus. So we here at modern time, the scientific consensus is that life evolves. Now, let's suppose that anybody, say Dr. Dino, presented any amount of evidence that suggests that life was created, that life didn't evolve. What do you think science would do? Would they be blinded with confirmation bias, or do as they usually have done in the past and look at the evidence with skepticism, scrutinize it, verify it, and accept it if it was convincing, right? So I think you get the picture here. Yeah, so I'm really excited to see what kind of evidence Dr. Dino has. Just a reminder, the following things are not evidence. A book says a thing. Otherwise, we could claim that Native Americans are of Jewish descent, because that's what the Book of Mormon says. Also, we have the argument from incredulity. This is, I don't understand it, therefore it's not true. A lack of evidence. Basically, this is the argument from ignorance. We don't have evidence that the flying spaghetti monster exists, therefore he doesn't exist. That's another fallacy. And we have the appeal to emotion. It makes me feel good, therefore it's true. Carl Sagan said that science works. It's not perfect, but it is by far the best tool we have. Self-correcting, ongoing, applicable to everything. It has two rules. First, there are no sacred truths. All assumptions must be critically examined. Arguments from authority are worthless. Second, whatever is inconsistent with the facts must be discarded or revised. We must understand the cosmos as it is and not confuse it with how we wish it to be. The obvious is sometimes false. The unexpected is sometimes true. Okay, in conclusion, scientific consensus supports evolution. Science revises to align with the facts, and Kent has no conclusive evidence to disprove evolution or to prove creation. And that is the presentation. Stop screen. All right, and looks like Dr. Dino is dipped out. There he is.
We got him back. Oh, just 1 second. We got some echo going on. Let me just fix that. And okay, just in time. That was between the 7 and 10 minutes. Wade, so we're going to give Kent, let's say, up to 10 minutes. However much time you want to take out of that 10 minutes. So whenever you're ready.
Whoever turned the noise out there, shut them off. Will you? Tell them, go away. Okay.
Good to go, Dr. Dino.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes. Thank you, Wade, for plagiarizing my slides. That's the sign of, that's a good sign. You guys are getting desperate. The Bible says in Psalm 62 that they delight in lies. The whole evolution theory is based on lies. For instance, the geologic column does not exist anywhere. There is no such thing as a fossil record. There's a bunch of fossils, so that's not a problem, trillions of them. But it's not a record. None of them have a date on them. So the whole theory of evolution is based upon lies, that the layers of the earth are different ages, which they're not, and that the fossils can talk or something or tell a story about themselves. All we know is they're dead. You don't know they had any children. O'Rourke said back in 1976, the intelligent layman has long suspected circular reasoning in the use of rocks to date fossils and fossils to date rocks. The dates of the geologic column that they preach is determined by which fossils are found in it. And the age of the fossil is determined by the layer it's found in. The geologists never bothered to think of a good reply, feeling the explanations are not worth the trouble as long as the work brings results. Encyclopedia Britannica said, 70 years ago. It cannot be denied from a strictly philosophical standpoint. Geologists are arguing in a circle. The succession of organisms has been determined by a study of their remains embedded in the rocks, and the relative age of the rocks is determined by the remains of the organisms. Date the rocks by the fossils, date the fossils by the rocks. Circular reasoning. Idiotic, okay? Let's see. Clear back in 1983, New Scientist magazine said ever since William Smith, at the beginning of the 19th century, Fossils have been and still are the best and most accurate method of dating and correlating the rocks in which they occur. What do you say? How do you date the rocks? By the fossils. Right. Apart from very modern examples, which really archaeology, I can think of no cases of radioactive decay being used to date fossils. But now when they do date them with radioactive dating, they may have to test it 5, 6, 10, 15 times to find the date that they want to match the fossil. Radiometric dating would not have been feasible if the geologic column had not been erected first. There's no way to simply look at a fossil and say how old it is unless you know the age of the rocks it comes from. Stop and think about that. This poses something of a problem. If we date the rocks by the fossils, how can we then turn around and talk about patterns of evolutionary change through time in the fossil record? Good question. The rocks do date the fossils, but the fossils date the rocks more accurately. This is insanity to believe something like that, okay? Using only temporal concepts, circularity is inherent. There's no other way to do it. You have to date the rocks by the fossils and the fossils by the rocks. This is their logic. It is idiotic. The charge of circular reasoning, in other words, if somebody accuses you of using circular reasoning, like I am doing, I'm accusing them, they can say it can be handled several ways. It can be ignored. It's not the proper concern of the public. And they do this. They appeal to authority. Well, all the professors at universities believe this. It doesn't matter. You're dating the fossils by the rocks and the rocks by the fossils. There's no such thing as a geologic column. They always say the top layer is younger. I say, really? Where did it come from? Outer space? Are these layers laying down to the Earth from outer space someplace? Moving it from here to here is not changing the age of it. We do the demonstration where we take the sand art thing and flip it over. You always get 20 or 30 layers in a matter of minutes. They're all in here at the same time. They're all the same age. The whole geologic column is dumb. It doesn't exist, okay? It cannot be denied, or they can, if somebody charges you with circular reasoning, you can just ignore them. Say, well, you're not qualified. That's what they do with me. You don't have a degree from an accredited university, so you're not qualified. I got logic to say, that's dumb. Is the top layer coming from outer space? They can say it can be denied by calling down the law of evolution. Well, we know it's true because 98% of the professors believe it, like Wade said. It can be admitted as a common practice, or it can be avoided by pragmatic reasoning. Are the authorities maintaining on one hand that evolution is documented by geology, and on the other, that geology is documented by evolution? Isn't this a circular argument? Yes, it is. They've known this for 40 years. The lowest layers are obviously the oldest. This is from the court trial, 1925, Dayton, Tennessee, the world's most famous court trial. In the movie Inherit the Wind, there's a lot of problems in there, but he said the lowest layers are obviously the oldest. Stop right there. No, they're not. That is not true. If water's moving sideways, it'll deposit multiple layers at the same time. Simultaneous. Go Google experiments in stratification in Colorado, where they have the sedimentation tank. They do testing. How do sediments form? And some French guy, I forget his name now, I got a name, not that long. He did it, this is back 30 years ago. He showed moving water deposits layers horizontally. So you could get a fossil on top that's actually older than a fossil on the bottom. Yeah. They talk about the geologic column where you got limestone, 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 limestone. What's the difference between 100 million year old Jurassic limestone and 600 million year old Cambrian limestone? They're both limestone. How do you tell which it is? By the fossils that are in it. This is circular reasoning. This is dumb. But they'll show you. Geologic column contains, let's see, what do we got here? Different formations of limestone, 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 limestone. It's baloney. Grand Canyon from Wikipedia. Redwall limestone, Temple Butte Formation, and then mauve limestone underneath. If you shake up a jar with sand, gravel, clay, mud, water, it'll separate into layers in minutes. So the whole geologic column is a lie. It does not exist anywhere. The purpose of this debate tonight is for Wade to show where is the evidence for evolution. So we better define what we mean by evolution. This word has 6 different meanings. I cover this all the time. It drives the atheists nuts. Not actually a drive, it's a short putt for them, but that's okay. Cosmic evolution. That's the origin of time, space, matter. Where did time come from? Where did matter come from? Where did space come from? You think everything fit in a dot smaller than a proton? That's insane. Secondly, you have to have chemical evolution. Because if this stupid Big Bang theory they teach produced hydrogen and helium and maybe some lithium, How do you get gold, silver, and platinum out of that? You got to have the chemicals evolve. They don't want to talk about that. I understand. Then you'd have to have the stars and planets evolve. Nobody's ever seen a star or planet form. None. Tonight's meteor shower. We're going to see a bunch of pieces broke apart, but nobody sees one form. Then you have to have the origin of life, organic evolution. The origin of life. Theories of organic evolution. The world has been evolved and not created. This is what they count on. They don't like to believe the idea of there's a creator. There's no other logical conclusion. If I said, I want you to explain how this pen came to be, but you cannot use man or a designer as your answer. Well, I've already shut off the only logical answer by the definition. I want you to explain how the world got here, but you can't say God did it. Okay, well then, you've already shut off this had a designer. I don't know who did it. I don't know where, and I don't care. I know it had a designer. It had a designer. That's common sense 101. The earth, the people here, the cells in your body, each person has 100 trillion cells. Fat people have more. And each cell has 100 trillion atoms, all doing their job. I think it was designed. Organic evolution is part of the evolution theory. Which exactly what do you mean by, is there evidence for evolution? Is there evidence for organic? No. Nobody knows how a mixture of lifeless chemicals first became a living cell. They say we came from the primordial soup. I cover all this later. I'm running out of time here. So then you have to have what we call macroevolution, changing from one kind of animal to another. The Bible says 10 times in the first chapter and 20 times in the first 7 chapters that the plants and animals would always bring forth after their kind. Dogs produce dogs, cats produce cats, cows produce cows. You might get a variety of them, no question, but it's still a cow or still a cat. It never changes. Nobody has ever seen anything change from one kind to another. They imagine it. They draw lines on paper, connecting them. There is no evidence for any of these first 5 at all. I rest my case. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kent, for your 10-minute opening statement. That concludes the opening statements for the debate. Now we are going to have one uninterrupted round of rebuttals. So, Wade the Wizard, we are going to hand it over to you. And let's give you 6 minutes for the rebuttal. And whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I got a little demonstration here. I hope you can see it. Got some playing cards, right? Now, so I'm going to do a little demonstration. Watch closely. I'm going to place these down in an order. Okay, so there's my hand. We got the jack. Then we got the ace and the king. Okay, so my question is, which card, this isn't a magic trick, all right, but I'm just asking, what card did I lay down first? Okay, just something to think about. Even in your supposed flood model, which the flood most definitely didn't happen, we can talk about that later. Even in the flood model, there were layers being deposited in an order. Okay, so that's something of significance. So we have our jar of dirt, we shake it up. At what point does your dirt turn into a rock? It's curious, just curious. I guess you weren't really listening when I started my presentation, but I was saying that I'm taking the position of the religious creationists who also believe in evolution, which is the majority. Let me share my screen real quick. Switch over here.
You're shared.
So yeah, I just wanted to point this out one more time. The majority of religious people believe in God and believe in evolution, but believe that God did it. Kinds produce kinds, just a lot of wild stuff. I want to, I also want to emphasize that Dr. Dino did not provide any evidence of creation. That's because there is no evidence for creation. One thing that I want to make sure I get to is ERVs, because you still don't get it. Just as John Perry's clearly stated, he said a retrovirus insertion might have a negative, neutral, or beneficial effect. Okay, but that is not the reason they're evidence for evolution. Pelagia, during the 20 minutes that you cut out in his response video, he said it doesn't matter if Kent could show that every single one of the thousands of ERVs insertions was specifically beneficial. Why? Because that's not the point. You said beneficial functions of endogenous retroviruses, but that's not the point. Now I would ask you, why are ERVs evidence for evolution? But I'm sure if I left that up to you, you would dodge that question and not answer it. So I will answer it for you. Let's take two people. If they get infected with the retrovirus, there is a 1 in 10 million chance that it's in the exact same location. It's like pin the tail on the donkey, completely random. They've done studies to find that there are 10 million insertion sites. Okay, but if one person gets infected with an ERV and then has offspring, reproduces, there is a 100% chance it's in the exact same location. Chimpanzees and humans have 205 endogenous retroviruses. Whether they're beneficial, negative, neutral, doesn't matter. They are in the exact same location. And each insertion has a 1 in 10 million chance of being in the same location. If we have a common ancestor, that's 100% chance of those results. But again, if we are of different descent, that's 1 in a stupid, crazy number. It's impossible. So, and then to further this point, some people might say, like Dr. Dino might say, oh, well, God put those ERVs in a specific location to trick us or something. John Perry on his channel Genetics and Evolution did a great video about, did God put endogenous retroviruses DNA in our genome? The short answer, no. And I will turn the time back over to Dr. Dino.
Okay, Wade, that was your 6-minute rebuttal. Thank you so much. And we're going to hand it to Kent. Actually, before I do hand it to Kent, I want to remind the audience, we will be, as usual, having an audience Q&A. That's where we get you guys involved. So just make sure you are tagging me with your questions and tag me at Standing for Truth. That way I won't miss them, as we've got quite the lively chat going on. So Kent, we're going to hand it over to you whenever you're ready. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Mike, okay. One of his arguments from Wade was the majority, believe in this, majority opinion has never been evidence for anything. All through history, the majority has been wrong on hundreds of things, thousands of things. Majority opinion in science is crazy. The majority of doctors thought George Washington should be bled to get him over whatever he had, and they bled him to death. So they're wrong about, the majority can be wrong. Secondly, you showed at the beginning, for Standing for Truth there, Donnie, the majority do not believe in evolution. It's a very small percentage, 12% are on his side. I don't know where he gets this number, 99%. They make up this stuff all the time. Or maybe survey. If I go to a university and survey 20 professors who teach there, of course they're going to say that, because they lose their job if they don't. Okay. Now, as far as the cards, Wade, I'll answer your question. You took the cards and put them, 3 of them down, okay? All of them came from the same deck, which was made at the same time. All those cards are the same age. Your question of which one was laid down first is not the right question. Are the cards all the same age? If you shuffle the deck of cards, is the top card now younger because it's on top? What if shuffle the deck and the 3 of spades end up on top? Okay, then you reshuffle them. Oh, now it's the King of Hearts on top. Oh, it's a shuffling effect. All that the layers are that we see on the planet are a shuffling effect. The flood water, just the tide going up and down during Noah's flood, the tide would go up and down about 880 times. Noah faced 880 tidal changes during the 7 months he was floating in the ark. Then the last 5 months he's waiting for the ground to dry out. But the tide coming up and down with a liquid-covered earth, a phenomena would happen called harmonics, where the tide does not get interrupted. So if the tide is going up and down 880 times with no interruptions, a harmonic tide on the earth, if the earth were covered in water, would be a 200-foot tidal change. Every 6 hours, 12.5 minutes, tide goes up, tide goes up. Just that water moving back and forth to keep the bump full under the moon is going to cause enormous amount of sorting. And look at the experiments in stratification by, I should have looked up the guy's name, some French name. He shows the layers forming 10 or 12 layers at a time, forming horizontally, not vertically. You stacked your cards vertically. The water moving sideways would stack them horizontally. And as far as the jar, good question, fair question you asked. Let's see. You said, how long would it take the dirt to turn to a rock? Well, that depends on numerous factors. We live in a gravel pit here. We drive the vehicles around, or sometimes you get them muddy. When you come back and let it sit in the sun, how long does it take to get hard on the vehicle? 2 hours, maybe 20 minutes if it's bright and sunny and hot out. Maybe if it's rainy, longer. Mud turns to rock, mudstone, sandstone, okay, limestone. It obviously was all sedimentary at one time. It was all liquid at one time because it's laid down in layers. All of the layers that we see on the planet were laid down in one big flood, Noah's flood. But the scoffers do not want to believe in the flood because that represents the judgment of God. I understand completely, okay? So let's see. You said I gave no evidence for creation. Wade, this is the purpose of this debate. Even the title is, where's the evidence for evolution? The burden of proof's on you. You want everybody to pay for your religion to be taught in the schools. Well, I think I've got a right to say, where's the evidence for this? That's not science. If you want to debate the evidence for creation, we could do that at a separate time. I don't have that burden of proof tonight. Okay. You mentioned ERVs. Let me get to that one. That's going to be 1, 2, 1, 5. I got too many slides in here. Endogenous retroviruses, just the name can be deceptive because we always think of virus as bad. These ERVs are designed to do a specific function. When the woman gets pregnant, the sperm and the egg unite, and then they start to divide, and they become 2-celled and 3-celled. As it starts to make a little cluster, it now has to implant in the wall of the uterus and grow. Well, the uterus is going to reject this as a foreign body. What is this? There's an ERV in there to overcome that. It's amazingly designed to create the ability for pregnancy to take place, for implantation in the uterus to take place. Human endogenous retrovirus and DNA sequences within human, they contain up to 8% of your genome. There's a lot of them in there. Retroviral promoters in the human genome, clear back in 2008, they knew they were beneficial. Our analysis revealed that retroviral sequences in the human genome encode tens of thousands of active promoters. Transcribed ERV sequences correspond to 1.16% of the human genome, and this data suggests ERVs may regulate human transcription on a large scale. So it would not surprise me if all of the animals, all of the animals at least, maybe plants even, had ERVs in their system to allow certain functions. And the fact that there are 200 of them in the same location, maybe they're serving this. I bet monkeys have to get pregnant in a similar way that humans have to get pregnant. I bet there's some similarities there. So maybe it has to do with that. I don't know that it's all been studied. Back in 2014, they found new beneficial endogenous retroviruses in the immune response. So they're necessary for implantation for pregnancy. They're necessary for immune response. The word virus is what throws people off. They're not bad. They're good. Endogenous retroviruses. Let's see, 2021, just last year. Switching sides. Endogenous retrovirus protect us from viral infections. They're not bad. They're all, and it's not like if something bad got inserted in the genes. It's designed into the genes. It's supposed to be there. And the fact that you pass it on to your children, duh, that's logical. And the fact that all animals have similarity. You know, all the animals I'm aware of, all the animals in the world breathe. That's proof they're related. All the animals in the world eat and sleep and drink water. You are crazy to think that ERVs are somehow evidence for evolution. Endogenous retroviruses turned out to represent important components in the antiviral immune response. There's loads of information on this. I'm amazed you evolutionists are still using ERVs as evidence for evolution. It's during mammalian pre-implantation embryo development. This has been known for a long time. That's what they're for. Of course, there are similarities. It doesn't prove a common ancestor. It proves a common designer. Take it away.
All right, gentlemen, fantastic debate so far. That concludes the opening statements and the rebuttals. I see questions flying in from the audience as well, so thank you for that. Now we are moving into the open discussion. As always, we want to keep these discussions professional, civil, and focusing on one topic at a time. So what we'll do is hand it over to Wade the Wizard, since Kent just ended with his rebuttal. Wade, why don't we have you start off with picking the first topic and asking the first set of questions. Gentlemen, go ahead.
Okay. So just a quick side note. This isn't my question, but as far as ERVs go, I challenge you, or at least highly recommend, at least everybody who's watching, go to John Perry's channel and check out this video. Did God put endogenous retrovirus DNA in our genome? But so my first question I want to kick off. So this is kind of in response where you're saying that the majority opinion is not always right, and I agree. But let's just look at these two different graphs. Okay, the one here on the left is we did a survey of what's your favorite food, and it was pretty diverse. We have a lot of people like Chinese, Indian food, American. It's all over the place. And this other survey was the shape of the Earth. The majority of people think that it's round. Okay, so like what's the difference? I just want you to kind of think about this for a bit. So with something like food, that's a subjective opinion, right? And while the shape of the Earth is more of an objective fact. So when it comes to evolution, I don't really care what your opinion is as far as which God you believe in, whether that's the Hindu God or Judaism, whatever. Yeah, the facts have a consensus. Also, I want to point out, this is just the last of this. So imagine if we did a survey on the effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccine. Should we, or what would be a more valuable survey? Would we survey doctors who have studied medicine for the majority of their life, or a bunch of high school dropout conspiracy theorists who still live in their mom's basement? Like, there's probably different results, right? So I guess if Kent wants to respond to that, as far as like, did I stop my screen? Yeah. So
yes. Okay, let's do equal time. There's a few things you brought up there, even starting with your recommendation of a specific video on ERV. So anything that Kent wants to respond to, we're going to give him plenty of time. Go ahead, Kent.
Well, yeah, several things. So he gave two options. Which is better, a group of doctors believing something or a bunch of high school dropouts in their mother's basement? Are those the only two kind of people in the world? How many of you are neither a doctor nor do you live in your basement of your mother? Everybody here. So you gave it's called a false dichotomy. It's like saying which is correct, elephants are blue or elephants are pink. Neither one, okay? There's a lot more options than that. This is still a very hotly contested issue, and it'll get you kicked off of YouTube if you even mention it. So I'll refrain from that. But I think there are lots and lots of doctors who are totally against what's going on. Stopping a virus with that stupid mask is like stopping a mosquito with a chain link fence. The holes in the mask are huge compared to the virus. Viruses are real tiny. It's a complete waste of time, in my humble opinion. So if a bunch of doctors are wearing those masks, they ought to know, if anybody ought to know, the size of a virus compared to the size of the holes in their mask. Duh. Another topic. Okay. You gave those two options, high school dropouts. As far as the definition of evolution, if the majority of people believe something, exactly what are they talking about? Why did Columbus sail around the world? Didn't the majority of people in Columbus's day think the world was flat? A lot of them did, and they were wrong. Didn't the majority of doctors in George Washington's day think you should bleed people to get them well? The doctrine of humors, you can Google that. All through history, the majority has been wrong. And it's not true that the majority believe in evolution, if you define what you mean by the word evolution. It's true, everybody that I know of agrees in microevolution. Variations happen within the kind. There's a lot of varieties. I got tons of stuff on. Here we go. Let me go to a different one since I got 2 minutes left here. Alt DV, slide number 689, 689, enter. Macroevolution changes from one kind to another. This is only done by drawing lines on paper. They put everything in a family tree and say we started as an amoeba or a protista or a single-celled creature. They're skipping down to, they're missing the first 4 stages of evolution. They want to start here. But you really think an amoeba turned into a shark and a whale and everything? There's no evidence of a single-celled creature ever producing even a 2-celled creature, let alone an elephant or a whale or a human. But they put them on, draw lines on paper. Here we got the human and the snail related. Wade, simple question. Do you believe you are related to a snail? Just a yes or no.
Yeah.
Okay. So SpongeBob, or no, what's his name? Dave thinks he's a strawberry. PZ Myers thinks he's a fish. Who's the guy who thinks he's an ape? And you think you're related to a snail. Okay, you're welcome to believe that, but that's not science. Here they got the human and the chicken related to a common ancestor.
Wait, was that his question? Are we going to kind of do it back and forth?
Okay. I did. You believe you're related to a snail and a chicken? What, can I throw a chicken in there? Are you related to a chicken? And why do you believe such a thing?
Because the whole body of evidence suggests that we have a common ancestor. And it's the scientific consensus of facts and evidence.
The title of the debate. Where's the evidence for evolution? That's the title of the debate. What is the evidence that makes you think you're related to a snail?
All right. Should we move on? I've got a question.
Okay.
Well, unless you want to answer his, because at the same time, we do want to make it free-flowing, Wade. So it doesn't have to be really overly strict. Why don't we have you engage Kent's question a little bit, then we'll allow you to ask another question.
Well, it's kind of curious because as we can see from pattern of history of Kent's debates, I'm certain that there's no convincing evidence. There's plenty of evidence, but I don't know that there's because Kent has such a confirmation bias towards a book says a thing. There's not really any evidence that I'm gonna. I would suggest and recommend everybody who's watching. This video is more targeted towards you because I don't think Kent will ever change his mind. But I want you to go and do unbiased research and look for the evidence.
Well, Wade, I just want to jump in real quick because I have to note as host and moderator, the title of the debate is Evolution on Trial. So you being the proponent of biological evolution tonight, you are on trial. So it would be your kind of obligation to present a line of evidence for evolution for us to engage. We discussed ERVs for a bit. Is there another line of evidence that you'd like to bring forth, or if you wanted to rebut Dr. Hovind's points on functional endogenous retroviruses and how they are essential for embryological development? Did you have any thoughts on that? Let's kind of go from there. Wade, go ahead.
Well, so I guess I can pull this up. I mean, it's just like I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm not by any means, expert in evolutionary biology, and that's kind of where I was pointing to. So, like the survey with doctors versus some nut jobs, there's going to be a big difference because, you know, if we were having a discussion about mechanical engineering, I would have some kind of ground, some expertise where I've studied it for a decade or so. You know, Kent here, he's he's the professional on creationism in the Bible, and so I don't know, I was hoping to get any amount of evidence supporting that, but I will switch over. I guess I got to share it first.
Well, if we wanted to get Ken, is there anything you wanted to respond to there? It looks like Wade's proposing that the burden of proof would be on you. Is any thoughts on that?
Well, so far he's given us his evidence for evolution, ERVs, which I don't think is evidence for evolution, and majority opinion. Those are the two things. He's a mechanical engineer. So was my brother. My dad was an electrical engineer. Wade, do you know of any machine built by man, any machine, a simple one, a bicycle, the sprocket on a bicycle? Could that happen by chance, or did that have a designer? Could a screw or a bolt and a nut that fit together, is there any chance the nut and the bolt could form independently so they fit together with no human designer involved? Can you think of a scenario that would make a nut and a bolt, let alone a space shuttle, just a nut and a bolt?
You know, I think about, like, if we had two bikes and we left them alone in the garage for a while, would eventually make a tandem bicycle?
You think the two bikes would turn to a tandem bicycle if you left them alone for a while?
Would that happen?
No.
Oh, okay. Why is that?
It's a machine. It requires intelligence to put them together to make a tandem bicycle. It takes a whole lot more intelligence to make a single cell. One cell in your body is more complicated than the space shuttle. I can't believe you think it happened by chance.
If we took, I don't know, two rabbits and put them in a garage, left them alone, would they ever make another rabbit?
If they're male and female and it's not San Francisco, yes, they probably would.
So it's probably a little bit different comparing bicycles to rabbits. So you should probably stop using mechanical examples. No?
The world is made up of billions and trillions and quadrillions, quintillions of atoms and material particles. According to your theory, if I understand it correctly, you believe, and evolutionists believe, the Earth began as a hot ball of rock. It cooled down, and then it began to rain on those rocks. So you have nothing but matter. And you think it somehow came alive, and that life form learned how to reproduce with who, and then change to all these family trees. This is the stuff they put in the textbooks that the kids have to learn. I resent that. That's not science. It's a religious belief. If you put the rabbits already have a really complicated reproductive system, and they love to use it, and they do it well. We got a bunch of rabbits here, and we can't keep count. We don't know how many we got anymore. Started off with 20, probably got, who knows? Anyway, and it's not San Francisco here. So yes, rabbits can reproduce, bicycles cannot. Adding reproduction greatly increases the impossibility of it evolving. Impossible for reproduction to evolve. Impossible for life to get started, for reproduction to get started, and nobody has ever seen a rabbit produce a non-rabbit. You get big rabbits, little rabbits, you know, white ones, dark ones, but you always get a rabbit. Are there any examples you could point to where somebody has seen a rabbit produce a non-rabbit?
That's your question you're going to stick with?
Sure, fair question.
So saying that, like, a kind produces a different kind, that's how evolution is observed, is that within nested hierarchies, you always belong to the same group of animals. So you'll only ever get more specialized within the group. So like if like one of your favorite examples, if a horse grew wings, you know, if a horse eventually evolved to grow wings, it wouldn't be feathered wings on its back. It would be more like a bat where it has a membrane of skin, you know, because it's still going to be within the mammal family. It's not going to switch over to the bird's kind.
Okay. Does this chart I'm showing on screen?
Well, okay, so that was your question. I answered. So now I've got a question. Can we kind of jump back and forth like that? Is that all right?
Well, let's allow Kent to respond to what you're saying. I mean, we can't just leave things hanging, especially if evolution's on trial, Wade. So, Dr. Dino, we'll give you a response, and then Wade will give you a chance for another question.
Correct. Wade just sank his own ship and doesn't realize it. He said you will only get more specialized within the same. I think the word clade is what they typically use. So rabbits will always produce rabbits. You get more specialized. I agree. I understand. Okay. There are 1,100 different kinds of bats. They're still a bat. But the chart shows the bat and the rabbit and the human coming from an amoeba. So the amoeba apparently was able to not stay in its own clade and was able to produce something different. This chart shows plants and horses related. Well, plants don't have skin like a horse, but they got a line on here connecting them. So yes, you do believe they did somehow change. This has been my point. We observe variations within the same kind. We never observe anything else. But you guys just blatantly put them on charts like this, and we're supposed to believe the shark is related to the strawberry plant because it's got a line on paper. That's not science. It's religion. It's dumb, but you're welcome to have that religion. I don't object. This is America, the land of the free and the home of the slave, and you're allowed to have any religion you want. But you shouldn't force that down the throats of students in school and have everybody else have to pay for your religion to be taught. This chart is nothing but religion. Nobody's ever seen a strawberry produce a non-strawberry or a horse produce a non-horse, but you got them connected here, and you think it's okay. Why? Where's the evidence for this?
Okay, let me jump in real quick. So, Wade, you can either respond to any of Kent's points, or you can choose another topic or question at this point. So it's up to you.
I kind of like to jump into a different question, but this game. I mean, because again, like I said, I could show you all the evidence, and there's been a lot of people who have shared the evidence, and it just kind of has that confirmation bias to reject anything that.
I got to jump in, Wade, as moderator and host. Evolution's on trial tonight, so you can't just keep repeating. Other people have shown you the evidence. So far, you've looked to majority opinion, ERVs, and Ken has responded to those. So if there are other lines of evidence that past interlocutors of Ken have brought up that you find convincing, then maybe you should present those in order to engage. But it's up to you. I just don't want to have you repeating that line the entire debate. So go ahead, however you want to proceed. But if there is another convincing line of evidence that you want to put forth, go ahead. Evolution is on trial tonight. So,
okay. Whoops. Well, I can jump into that later, but I want to pull up a picture of where'd he go? This guy. My mouse is being weird. All right. So the question is, this guy, this living organism, or this fossil here, when this guy was living, Kent, did he walk on 2 legs or 4 legs? And how do you know this?
I would presume, based on typical anatomy of hips and shoulder joints, etc., that this one was capable of walking on 4 legs and generally did. However, many animals that walk on 4 can also walk on 2 for a while. I walk on 2 normally, but I could walk on 4 if I had to. That would not explain. And plus, it's a fossil. You couldn't prove that thing had any babies that lived. It's a dead creature found in the rocks. All you could really prove about that creature is it died. We couldn't prove how it walked. We could prove it had the capability of walking probably on 4 legs. Okay.
So there's some things we can determine about a deceased organism by its looking at its bones.
We can determine that it died for sure.
Oh, but you just said that you know for certain that he walked on 4 legs. How do you
No,
know
I
that?
said I would presume it could walk on four based on the anatomy of the hips, etc. But this one might have been born crippled and never got to walk at all. I mean, some people are born and something goes wrong and they can't walk ever. But they got the right anatomy for it. They just can't do it. I don't know about that one, Stegosaurus. But the ability to walk is stunning in its design. A mechanical engineer ought to know that. Build any machine that can do what that Stegosaurus does, and it will take you a whole lot of hours of engineering and a whole lot of thinking and a whole lot of planning. And when you get all done, you'll have to realize this machine that's able to walk was designed. Whoa. Yeah. Took a designer. Always does.
Yeah, I guess so. There's a couple things I want to emphasize with this example. That there are some things that we can determine, like the way that a creature moved, mobility. Because we can look at the living organisms today and how they work and how their anatomy works, and we can compare them and assert that this guy walked on four legs. He ate vegetation only. They can guess about how much he weighed, where he lived, things like this. And we can determine a lot of information about fossils. The other important thing I want to emphasize is there's two main things that separate us from our cousin apes. And that is, we walk on two legs and we have big brains. And there are a lot of fossils that conclusively determined that there were fossils they were somewhere in between. They could walk on two legs, but their brains weren't as big. And I don't know, it's just interesting. It's some evidence towards evolution and common ancestry, and that fits in perfectly with ERVs.
Okay. I would agree. There are some fossils that are found of creatures, ape, gibbon, orangutan, monkey, human, whatever, and the brain size is different. I think you'll find brain size of living humans today varies greatly from small to large. The smaller ones tend to get jobs at universities teaching kids they came from a rock, in my humble opinion. Okay. But anyway, from the Stegosaurus fossil you showed, could we determine that it probably could not fly? I think that would be reasonable. It probably does not have the mechanics necessary for flight, and it's way too massive in its body weight. So I think we could say it was limited to walking on the ground. It could not fly. I think we would also have to say we don't know if it was able to reproduce anything that was different than a Stegosaurus. What we do know is every farmer in the history of the world will tell you every animal they've ever bred produced the same kind. Cows produce cows, and horses produce horses, and chickens produce chickens, without exception. So to look at the fossils and claim this could do something that no animal today can do is ridiculous. No animal today can produce something other than its kind. No animal in recorded history has produced something other than its kind. If Stegosaurs were still alive today and people were raising them in the farm, I'd be willing to bet $5 they would have baby Stegosaurs when you got them together. Every time. So you want to attribute a magical ability to a bone in the dirt that no animal today has. They draw these lines on paper and this way, my chart, and they connect them like this is some kind of science. Look at this. The human is related to the chicken. How do you know? We got a line on paper connecting them. And the frog, he's related to a chicken too. Our chickens eat the frogs if they come around. No, this is baloney. This is not science. And I wish you guys would admit it. It's your religion and you're welcome to it. What we could determine from that Stegosaur fossil you've shown, it died. It probably was not able to fly. And I don't think you could prove it had babies that were different than Stegosaurs.
And if it did, that would disprove evolution, because that's not how evolution works.
How can you not get this? Wait, you have everything coming from a single-celled creature at the bottom of your chart here. Here it came from a sponge. Do you think everything alive today came from a single-celled protista, like this one shows right here? Origin of life was a protozoa. Here, the protozoa somehow produced something that wasn't a protozoa. The protozoa eventually produced a shark and a starfish and a snail and a worm and a strawberry and a human. But yet you admit that they always stay within their same clade. How can you not see everything got out of its clade on your tree here? Everything did. Where's the evidence for that? I don't believe it happened. You do. Okay, great. Go believe it. But quit calling it science. This has everything coming out of its clade. A single-celled creature turned into a human or a dog. That's where my objection is. I don't know how you guys can't see it. But you say on one hand, they always stay within their clade, and it would disprove evolution if it came out of its clade. Well, okay, your old chart disproves evolution then, because this is fairy tale stuff. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I'm trying to explain colors to a blind man. I don't understand how you can't get it.
I kind of feel the same struggle. I mean, like, because I've been studying, like I said, I'm a mechanical engineer. I've been studying evolution for like on and off, maybe a couple months. And it's such a complex topic in breadth and depth. And like, you know, we're an hour in and there's just so much to talk about. And so it's kind of difficult for me to explain. I did have one thing I'd like to share, might help some people. I mean, not Kent, but to kind of understand why evolution, like you'll never get something that's in a different group. Let me just have a couple pictures here.
Yeah, if you want to share screen, just let me know. And here we go.
And you can see that. I'm going to hide that. I'm going to show this. So much like a tree branch, this is the way that we've observed evolution. Okay. We have this big branch. You can see my mouse, right? My tiny little
yes.
mouse.
Yeah.
So this branch comes along, and then when it diverges, we have these different umbrelling, like kind of like an umbrella classification. So this branch, this branch, this branch, they all belong to life. Okay, and then we can look, maybe a couple of branches over here. They're both along here. So, if this branch right here, if we had a new sprout that started growing this way, it would still belong. It always belong to this branch, and we can't really where these kind of different kinds, which like what you're looking for, I guess, like an elephant and a banana, you have to go back in time, and then you see that the branching, there was a very similar common ancestor. Another thing, so to kind of point this fact out more, if we zoom in, like say right here. So this branch was mammals a long time ago, and then we have birds. Now, if, for example, bats that are still mammals, if they developed a similar trait that birds have, like such as flight, it might cross over here in one trait.
I don't have an answer for that.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I might. Excuse me. Anyway, I'm saying that bats still belong to the branch of mammals. Like they'll never outgrow that's why bats are considered mammals and not birds. And we can look at the taxonomy classes, and we can see that for the kingdom, phylum, and for those two branches, they had a common ancestor. They had these similar traits that they could consume organic material, breathe oxygen. But then when we get down to their class of mammalia and aves, then they start to differentiate and they start to diverge. But if this bat had another branching, like in a ring species, like we observe in the real world, then it would still be a bat, even if it couldn't fly anymore, or like it's still a bat. Yeah.
Okay, let's hand it over to Kent. Go ahead, Kent, with your response.
Again, I think he just defeated his own argument. It would always be a bat. By the way, Wade, you cannot go back in time. All we've ever observed is bats produce bats. You said it's such a complex topic. When somebody talked you into becoming a Mormon, they would probably start off by saying, oh, this is really complex, and Joseph Smith and his visions that he saw, and all this kind of stuff. It would take you years to study all that learn about the dumb stuff Mormons believe, okay? That Joseph Smith was some kind of prophet. But they approach it like, wow, it's such a vast topic. Let's study that. They slowly twist people around and turn them into being a Mormon, I mean. And so it's the same thing with evolution. They say, oh, it's just so complicated. We got to study this. And go back to your chart. Let me show you your branching chart. Can you call that up there, Wade? Your branching is muted there, Donnie. But I don't need to hear him. I just need to see his chart and show it. Okay.
Oh, Wade, if you could you share screen on your chart there earlier in your argument, just for
branching
Kent to have
chart
a look at? Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Oh, wait, back up one more. Right there. You have mammals and birds coming off of the same part of the chart. If you could go back in time, what was the creature before that? Where is the part mammal, part bird? Where are there any birds that nurse their young? I think birds they're totally different. The fact that you drew a line on paper and connected mammals and birds defeats your own argument, because somewhere along the line there was something that produced mammals and something that produced birds. What was that something, and where's the evidence for it? Nobody's ever seen a bird produce a non-bird or a mammal produce a non-mammal. It's never been seen. It's not. That chart right there, classic example of pure propaganda. They drew all the lines on paper to connect them. Where does it happen today? Why can't they do it?
Birds and bats, is that what? Let's do. This is a really cool chart. It's first going to link up with humans, but I'll change that in just a second.
Oh, now you got lines on paper that are dotted and growing together. Where's the evidence for this? Nobody's ever seen this happen.
Let's just look at this for a second.
Oh, I see it. I've seen this many times.
Well, I was going to pull up bats. Where are the bats? Cats, bats. Here we go.
1,100 varieties of bats have now been classified. They probably had a common ancestor called a bat. But your chart draws that common ancestor back to an amoeba, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that, like, saying that is just appeal to incredulity.
It is incredible. It's unbelievable.
Incredulity.
It's unbelievable that a bat ever produced anything other than a bat. Going forward, we know that happens. In the present, we know it happens. Bats make baby bats. But you want to believe a bat came from an amoeba. Do you believe a bat came from an amoeba?
Let's try this. Well, I'll let you pick which line of evidence we can do. I'm not like an expert in any one field, but I'll let you pick, and we can
I can see that.
Talk about that. So let me pull this up one more time.
And I'm looking at the timer. We probably got time for maybe one more quick engagement on, I guess, a final line of it. Oh, I see your screen being shared.
Yeah. So I kind of want to illustrate this comparison with like forensic science. If we find one fingerprint or one hair, it doesn't really, we can't have a conclusive conviction, right? So if we look at evolution and we just look at vestigial structures, it's not going to be much evidence. But if we also look at homologous anatomy, paleontology, genetics, endogenous retroviruses, biogeography, ring species, taxonomy, mathematics, speciation, analogous features, we start to get, a pretty conclusive picture here that it is, in fact, evolution, and that birds and bats have a common ancestor. So I would also like to point out that the evidence that God did this is non-existent. So I'll let you pick what do you want to talk about? Which line of evidence here?
Well, you should have brought that up an hour and a half ago. That was the purpose of the debate, for you to show the evidence. Mathematics shows that bats are related to worms. I don't see how mathematics does that. Homologous anatomy, that's proof of a common designer. You're an engineer, for heaven's sake. I bet bicycle wheels have spokes on them. and have a sprocket for the chain to turn. I bet motorcycles also have a chain turning a sprocket in most cases, unless it's shaft driven, or I understand, or a jet engine. So the similarities in design indicate a design that works. We've got two bones in our rib.
But there's a big difference. Hold on, let me
Okay.
On this, you're talking about analogous or no homologous, right? So they're similar, right?
Right.
Like I mentioned before, inanimate, non-living objects like bicycles and cars cannot reproduce, and it's because of this fact that we know that living organisms reproduce and that their offspring look similar to them, but they have genetic variation. And that's why we can determine that that's why these different similar living life forms have homologous anatomy. And that's why whales have fingers and wrist bones, unlike fish.
Okay, Wade, you're an engineer. Who is your favorite engineer of all history that designed things, like who designed the Eiffel Tower? Who's your favorite engineer throughout history? Who did you study? Mechanical engineering.
Let's just say, gosh, I don't know. That's a good question.
Are there any famous engineers? Are there any famous engineers that designed more than one structure? Are there people who've designed a variety of structures, and are there similarities in those structures? Because they got the same designer. How can you not see it?
Okay, if you want to look at it this way, so we have Mastercraft boats, we have Tesla cars, and we have Boeing aircraft. They all have different designers. So therefore, does that mean there's a creator for fish and a creator for birds and a creator for mammals? So there's like multiple creators. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I never said that. Don't put words in my mouth. No, I didn't say that at all. Each of those things you mentioned, the boat and the Eiffel Tower or the jetliner, were designed. Every single screw on the airliner was designed. And if one of those screws fails, you have a problem.
There are multiple designers and engineers for bicycles and cars and trucks.
Right.
So does it not follow to say that for all life on Earth, there was a bear designer and a cat designer and a banana designer?
Do you agree, though,
what's your evidence that there is one creator, one designer?
Oh, that's a different topic. You're off topic now. My point would be
no. You're talking about intelligent design and creating and these similar designs between trucks and cars, and so I'm asking you, what's the evidence that there is a designer for biology?
Is there any chance that a car, a boat, or an airplane could form itself? Whether it's the same, different? Okay, good. Yeah, you're getting it. Is there any evidence? No,
you're not getting it.
Is there any evidence that a cow could create itself?
Yes.
Did a cow come from something that was non-cow way back in the past? Your charts show them coming from an amoeba. An amoeba is not a cow.
Gentlemen,
yes.
It's been extremely fun and engaging. The chat's having a great time, very lively chat. We've gone a few minutes over the agreed upon time.
I forgot to mention, I did want to have at least one time for one last question.
If Ken, are you okay with another couple minutes?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Bring it on.
So I just, my question is, what evidence would convince you to change your mind?
I like science. The word science means knowledge, based on the Latin word "sere," to know. What do we know? And we know things based upon observation, experimentation, and testing. I would like to see you take a potato. There are 4,000 varieties of potatoes now. It might have had a common ancestor called a potato. Could you, in the laboratory, turn a potato into anything other than a potato? Or a dog? Can dog breeders, can they ever get out of the dog? They get little ones and big ones. There seem to be limits. Do you think you'll ever get a dog as big as Texas? Or is there a limit somewhere before we get to Texas size?
So in response to my question, what would convince you of evolution? Is this, if we had a dog as big as Texas, would that convince you?
No, if we could see frequently creatures produce something other than their kind, the Bible says 20 times they're going to produce after their kind. That's all anybody's ever seen. So you claim that dogs and bananas have a common ancestor. Where's the evidence for this? I don't think it happens. I think there are over 1,000 varieties of bananas now. Okay, there's still a banana. That doesn't prove evolution. What would convince me, it depends on which branch of evolution you mean. If you mean variation, microevolution, number 6, I'm already convinced that happens. But that's where it stops. None of the other 5 can you make life in the laboratory. That would be step number 3. You got to get life starting, or 4, origin of life. If scientists could make life in the laboratory, all that would prove is it takes intelligence to make life. There isn't any evidence. Wade, just like you got tricked into being a Mormon, you got tricked into being an evolutionist. You ought to get out of that cult.
So if I understand your answer to my question, what evidence would convince you of evolution? Your answer was if we could see an animal produce an animal of a different kind.
I don't know. And I said, I don't think that would even convince me. That would be a start. It would take a whole lot more than that.
Okay.
We'd have to see all kinds. We'd have to see it happening all the time. We never see it happening. No farmer in the history of the world has ever seen a violation to that verse right there on screen. They bring forth after their kind. Fruit trees produce after their kind. Apple trees make apple trees. No exceptions. It should be common. You guys have apple trees connected to whales. We don't see that. It's not science. Darwin tricked everybody with his title, The Origin of Species. Well, we might call it a different species, but they're the same kind. Microevolution, this one happens. I agree. And that's where it stops. There's no evidence of anything other than that. Just like there's limits to how high a cow can jump. There's limits to how many kinds of dogs you're going to get. You're not going to get one as big as Texas. There's limits. It always is within the same kind. There is no evidence for evolution. You're in a cult, Wade. I'd like to get you out of there. I'll even make you a new hat. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, maybe that'll be the perfect time.
Sure. Yeah, we can wrap up.
Great discussion, tons of fun, lots of good audience questions coming in. So let's do some closing statements, though. 5-minute closing statements, just to kind of wrap up your thoughts and points. To be fair, Wade, maybe there's something you felt has been left on the table that you want to respond to. Same thing with Kent. Wade, let's start with you. You got 5 minutes for a concluding statement. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. Are we going to do like another concluding statement after questions with the audience, or do we want to?
Well, usually we do the concluding statements before the audience Q&A, but would you prefer a 5-minute concluding statement after the Q&A?
I think that works just fine.
Okay. All right. Well, we can go right into some questions then, and then we'll do a 5-minute wrap up. And as we're doing the questions, gentlemen, what I'll do is I'll put up a new poll and see if the mind has been changed. All right, here we go. This has been a funny one. So first one that came in, and as you guys are answering, this is where I'll get the new poll up. So this one comes in from Lucy MC, and this one is for you, Wade. So Wade, you've been on here before, but just in case you forgot how we run the Q&A section, whoever the question is for, we're going to make sure they get the final word, and that way we'll move on nice and smoothly. So Wade, question from Lucy is, as Kent was talking about with the water stratification, wouldn't the flood disprove what you say about the layers?
So my main point with the layers, what geologists do is they observe what we see in this world, what we can measure and observe, and even in floodwaters, or there's a number of different ways that sediment deposits, and my main point is that we can see the deposition rate, and we can see that this layer was deposited first. I mean, even if yeah, all these cards are the same age, all right, they're the same, made at the same time. But if I, stack them, I can look at the order in which they were stacked. So to I don't know, Age of the Rocks isn't as, I don't think that's very convincing of anything really, but we can look at the layers. That's just something that continues to repeat ad nauseum, and that the geologic column does not exist. But it's kind of interesting that we see these layers all throughout the earth, and given what we can observe and what we can see, and that deposition rates and things like that.
Okay, thank you, Wade the Wizard, for that response. Over to you, Kent, for your response. Oh, just one. I think Kent's on mute from his own end. As he's figuring that out, I'll just let everybody know I've got a great list of questions here, so I do appreciate everybody. I think he's just going to reboot his system there. So in the meantime, I do want to thank everybody for their generosity and their donations. You guys are the life and blood of this channel. And Alec Cox, thank you so much for the $100 super chat. Carmine, thank you for the $10 super chat. The debate, Wade, did not disappoint. This was a lot of hype for the big rematch, and you guys have made this a lot of fun. So as we allow Kent to reboot his system to come back in for the Q&A, I will remind everybody we've got another big debate tomorrow, this time on the nature of God. So this one we're going to have Matt Slick and Otis Lewis. They're going to be debating the Trinity. The great Trinity debate that kicks off at 8 p.m. EST, so the same time as tonight. That'll be the third debate of the week. Actually, 2 nights ago, me and Taylor from the Snake Was Right YouTube channel debated, do endogenous retroviruses provide evidence for evolution? A hot topic these days, and that was a ton of fun. We debated that for almost 3 hours. It was very technical, and it's gotten a lot of good feedback. So if you have not yet seen that debate, please do check it out. And of course, the Evolution Debate Challenge series does continue into May. I think we're now coming close to about 25 debates so far in this 2022 series. This is another much anticipated one for a while, actually. Ian Chen and Dr. Dino. So this should be an epic showdown. Again, is there reasonable evidence for evolution? If you have not yet seen Wade the Wizard and Kent Hovind's first debate, as this is chapter 2 in their debate series, please check that out on the channel. That one has gotten a ton of great feedback as well. Then we're going to have both Mark Drysdale and T-Rock back. Both of these gentlemen here are seasoned debaters. They've been on the channel numerous times. They've both had a handful of debates on these topics. So this one should be fun. The Genesis flood debate. Again, T-Rock and Drysdale. I believe that's May 2nd. So we have a ton of events scheduled, and just make sure you are subscribed, and also please hit that notification bell. Then we've got another sequel, Ken Rock. So he'll be back debating Ken. He'll be taking the Evolution Debate Challenge in May, end of May. Evolution on trial. So Ken, I appreciate you engaging this topic. And we got a new face as well, a new interlocutor at the end of May, Rune Norderhog. He's going to be debating Kent. The Evolution Debate Challenge continues. And next week, last week we had a conference. Actually, time flies by. It could have been a couple weeks ago now. We had a flood boundaries conference, 5+ hours of information on the flood, specifically focusing on the flood boundaries, pre, post, and the flood itself. That was John Mackay and also Joseph Hubbard from Creation Research. Next week, we've got another 2-day event. This one, though, is going to be dealing with the Jehovah's Witnesses. And then the very next day, we'll be dealing with, we'll be discussing the Trinity, providing evidence for the Trinity, and also refuting objections to the Trinity with Anthony Rogers. And I still don't see Kent back here, so I should give him a call, actually, just make sure that the system will be.
I could maybe answer some other questions while I don't know if you want to.
Sure, yeah, let's see if there's one here specifically for you. And okay, here's one from Redefine Living. Put it up on screen for everybody to see. Redefine Living. So, question for Wade. And he asks, and actually in that moment, we've got Kent is back. So, actually, let's do a mic test, Kent. Make sure that it's working.
Yes. Testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Hello, hello.
Looks good, brother. It worked out nicely because we have a ton of events coming up that it gave me the opportunity to kind of advertise them. So why don't we get right back to where we left off? And Kent, you might have missed the question, so let me just put it back up on screen for you. Here it is.
Yep, forgot the question. Okay. The stratification, wouldn't the flood disprove what you say? Noah's flood would form all of the layers. I can sit here and make 10 or 15 different layers in seconds with this little play toy here. Layers form rapidly when, get a jar, put water, gravel, sand, clay, mix it up thoroughly, and shake it up and set it down. It always settles into layers. I do this demo several times a day as we go around our gravel pit here for the tours. I have a place where we show the layers. There are 7 layers of gravel that were mined out of this spot where I'm sitting. And it's always gravel, sand, clay, gravel, sand, clay, gravel, sand, clay. That's the way it settles. Each tide would make a new group of gravel, sand, clay. Next tide, gravel, sand, clay. Here I have probably 20 layers formed in minutes. It doesn't take long. But the Bible says the scoffers in the last days who scoff at the Bible would be willingly ignorant of how God made the heavens and willingly ignorant of how the world was overflowed with water and perished. The flood explains it all. According to the Bible, the flood was about 4,600 years ago, 2600 BC. That made all the layers containing bazillions of dead things. There's no place on the earth today where people are observing fossils forming in any numbers. There are trillions of fossils in the ground. Petrified clams in the closed position, petrified closed, had to be buried alive. These are found by the billions. There's a place in Tennessee 10 feet thick with millions and millions of petrified closed clams. They're found on top of Mount Everest. Had to be buried quickly to stay closed when it died. So they're willingly ignorant, though. Peter said it best, willingly ignorant of the flood. They don't want to admit there was a flood. This formed quickly. All the layers of the earth formed quickly. There is no geologic column. It's a joke. And they admit it in their own textbooks. Let's see, right here, I got it. Let's see. There we go. If there were a column of sediments, unfortunately, no such column exists. There is no geologic column. Doesn't exist. So all the layers formed rapidly. All these formed in a couple of minutes. Go ahead, Wade.
Thank you for that response, Kent. Wade, question was for you, so we'll give you the last word on that one. Go ahead.
There's a big problem with your hypothesis. The flood never happened.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of evidence that disproves that, but I want to talk about Pando. It's a tree. So it's an aspen tree in Utah. And the thing about aspen trees, the way that they reproduce, they don't drop seeds. Like it's called a clonal colony. And so what happens is the roots spread out and then it grows out. So this is one tree. Biologically, it is one tree. And here's this map. It covers, so Pando is the world's largest tree, largest by weight organism. in the world, and we can look at the growth rate of how this clonal colony expands. We can mathematically calculate with a pretty good accuracy how old it is, and it's several thousand years old. And okay, so why is this significant? Because when you put trees underwater, they die.
Thank you, Wade. Since that was kind of a new topic, did you want to give Kent the opportunity to give his thoughts on it, or do you want to move to the next question?
Yeah, let's hear why trees don't die when they're submerged in water.
Well, it's interesting. You showed it yourself. The pando tree is of several thousand years old. If the flood was 4,600 years ago, I don't see how you've posed any kind of problem. Secondly, floods happen all the time. Trees can be submerged for different amounts of time. Most can endure being immersed for several weeks before they're damaged. We have right here, we have floods here all the time in Lenox, Alabama. When we get a good rain, they can be observed. They can be submerged for weeks or months. There are some that submerge for 6 months and then are dry. Now, Noah was in the ark for 1 year. That does not mean the whole world was covered with water for 1 year. Some parts of the world might have only been covered for a few weeks during that flood. How long would it take to kill everybody? How long can you swim? A couple days would probably do it. So the fact that Noah was in the ark for a year does not mean the whole world was covered in water for a year. We know in the 7th month, Noah hit bottom and rested. He stayed in 5 more months while things dried out, stuff began to grow. But certain parts of the world might have been only submerged for a few days. The Bible says they're ignorant of that flood. We just saw a demonstration of that. Go ahead.
Wade, we'll give you the last word since the question was for you. Go ahead.
Your whole explanation was just speculation. There was no evidence.
That's your geologic column. That's your family tree. It's all speculation.
Okay, gentlemen, thanks for keeping this fun. Here's a good question that comes in from Bubblegum Gun, specifically related to points brought up in the debate. So this one comes from you. This one's for you, Wade. He asked, does evolutionary mechanisms have foresight? And wouldn't ERVs, endogenous retroviruses, require foresight to become integrated and necessary to the organism? To give a little more context, Dr. Dino presented a few papers suggesting that these ERV sequences, they function in determining cell types, embryological development. And one of the papers that Kent showed had to do with the role of these ERV sequences in fighting off bad viruses like exogenous retroviruses, which HIV, for example. So how would you explain that from an evolution starting point? Go ahead.
Well, as a mechanical engineer who has studied ERVs, not much at all, I would refer to the experts. I'd tell them to check out John Perry's. Do you want I can just pull that up again.
I've watched that video, and correct me if I'm wrong, John Perry doesn't address these points, or does he in the video? Does he address these?
Yeah, I would just,
because if you're going to recommend a video that doesn't address these points, it might not be much help.
Well, I mean, they're like as a starting point. Like, these are great questions, and this is something that I would suggest people go and research. Because I mean, even if I were to give an answer right now, I don't know that anyone would be convinced. In my experience, when it comes,
do you have a convincing answer that's at the top of your head?
No, I don't. But I'm just saying, I'm like trying to emphasize. In my experience, when it comes to changing someone's mind, if I tell somebody whatever the answer is, it's not going to be as convincing as if they go and look for themselves and do the research for themselves. This I'm not entirely sure on, but okay. It still doesn't negate all of the other evidence for evolution.
But it might negate ERVs as evidence for evolution, you would admit?
I'm I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, well, let's hand it over to Kent for his response.
That's a good question. If you can put it back up there. Would evolution have to have foresight? When the first creature evolved, how did it know it needed eyes or ears or ability to move? Or does it, the first male that evolved, did it have to have a female evolve at the same time in the same place of the, in the same location? And they had to find each other and be interested? I mean, there's a whole host of problems here. So yes, it's a good question. I don't think evolution happens at all. But they pretend like it's got foresight, like it's trying to develop from an ape to a human. They show the charts, smaller, getting bigger, better, stronger, smarter. This is Satan's lie from the beginning. Ye shall be as gods. You guys have swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. Nobody ever sees a monkey produce a non-monkey baby, or an ape produce a non-ape, or an orangutan, or a gibbon, or any of them. It just doesn't happen. So it's a religious belief. I wish you guys would admit it's a religion and go teach it in private schools to those who wish to pay and come learn it.
Okay, thank you, Kent. And Wade, to be fair, question was for you. We'll give you the final word.
I wish I could remember exactly, as Kent was talking about, there was something that came to mind, and I'm pretty sure it was John Perry was covering it. Basically, the idea is, like, if these are viruses, how could they eventually have a beneficial mutation? And he explains it pretty well, though I don't remember the specific details of it. I'm just pointing out that, there's scientific research that's been done concerning that issue.
And he does explain it well. From what you remember, how does he explain it that would be considered well?
And I feel like they've done certain tests in the laboratory setting where, they've got mice and they infect them with certain viruses and kind of see how it affects them. But I don't remember the specific, like, mechanisms where it sees that virus and it kind of has a mutation to accept it or whatever. But.
Okay, well, I appreciate the responses, gentlemen, from you on that question. So let's move on to the next one that comes in from Redefine Living, and this one's for you, Wade. So I appreciate you being a good sport. Most of the questions are for you, it looks like. So Redefine Living asks, question for Wade: can you provide an example of a truly new information adding mutation that is also not deleterious or reductive?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing that comes to mind that I was researching a little bit about is how the evolution of bats. So they're essentially there's a lot of transitional species. There's a whole, I won't jump into it, but I mean, like, there's a whole section of, they call them gliding animals. So we have non-flying animals, we have these gliding animals, and we can see this nice transition. And it's supported, just the fact that bats have wings, like, that's not necessarily evidence, but when we look at the whole picture and we look at their anatomy and we look at their genetics and we see how living organisms reproduce, then we can, and there's also a lot of, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that bats used to be flightless and they've developed wings. So I think that's pretty beneficial in a number of ways.
Okay, thank you for the question, Sam. Thank you for the response, Wade, and we'll hand it over to Kent for his response.
Well, he did not provide any answer to that question. Where is a truly new information adding mutation? Every mutation observed is harmful, fatal, or neutral, does nothing. If you had a beneficial mutation, who would it marry? It would quickly get swamped by the rest of the population of the creature. We have some ducks come up when I feed them every time we take the tour around here. 2 of them have a mutation of their skull, where the skull bones didn't grow together right. It's a common mutation in ducks, and it makes the feathers grow funny. It looks like they got a hat on. Okay, the ducks. It's not a beneficial mutation. It's a harmful mutation, not harmful enough to kill them, but there's no benefit to it. Nobody's ever seen one beneficial mutation. But his theory, his religion of evolution, would require trillions of beneficial mutations to change an amoeba to a whale. Nobody's ever seen one. He didn't provide one. Nobody's ever provided one. There isn't one. It's something they believe in very strongly. I admire your faith. I do not admire the science.
Thank you, Dr. Dino, for that response. Wade, if you want a quick final word, since the question was for you, go ahead.
I think, I guess the theme with all these questions, questions are great. Question, curiosity, go do the research, go find out for yourself. I mean, I haven't looked much into these beneficial mutations, but if I just do a quick search, I can look at there's some information out there. I'd say go do the research, go do science.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. This one comes in from Young Earth Creation. Appreciate the question, YEC. So this one is for Wade, and he asks, has Wade heard of logical positivism? Since the 1920s, all metaphysical theories and evidence are to be rejected as meaningless science. They admit even if all evidence, and it cut off a little bit, evidence points to it, it's denied. Any thoughts on that? Have you heard of that?
I haven't heard of it, but I mean, metaphysical theories. If there's no evidence,
If not, it's okay. I could just move on to another question here that I've got one here for Kent. This one's a super chat that came in. Ken Rock. So he asks you, Kent, you do know not all cards are made at the same time, right? I guess he's referring to the geologic column argument.
I understand. If I shuffle this deck of cards, is the top card younger? No. They were shuffled. Moving it from here to here does not make it younger or older. I stand my point. There is no geologic column. It doesn't exist. But I know full well that is the Bible of the evolutionist. They will say, well, during the Cretaceous period or in the Precambrian, there's no such thing as Cretaceous. Quit talking that nonsense. There's no such thing as a Jurassic period. You imagine this stuff. All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting these layers. The layers all formed in one big flood. Shaking up that jar separates it into layers. All the layers are the same age. So I stand my ground. Yes, I understand some cards made in different times. I'd bet all these came off a printing press, similar time, all got stacked in a deck. But the question is, if I shuffle them, is the top card now younger? No, all the same age. Shuffling the materials, if a top layer is truly younger, like you guys believe, did it come from outer space? Where did it come from to make it younger?
Thank you, Kent. Wait, anything you wanted to add, or maybe you wanted to answer that question? Go ahead.
I don't know. So I guess what comes to mind is that science has made a number of pretty interesting predictions. So they had a hypothesis, and they said, you know what? I think that land mammals and fish once had a common ancestor, and based on species and the math, and they kind of worked it back, and they said, we would expect to find a species that's kind of in between a fish and these land mammals. We'd expect to find it in this location, in this layer, and they started digging, and then boom, they find Tiktaalik, and that they've made these predictions before with, they said, I think birds came from dinosaurs, and that was the prediction, and then they found the fossil in the location where they expected to find it in the timeline. There was, also with having common ancestry with apes, with chimpanzees, we made a prediction, and we found, these bipedal, small-brained hominids. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And question was for you, Ken. So we'll give you the last word.
Are we straight back to the one about the cards? Yeah, I think I've answered that one thoroughly. Okay. Yeah. He mentioned, and this is critical what he said. We think if you start digging, hold it, you're assuming the layers are different ages again. You would expect to find, I think there's a sorting of the fossils in the rock strata because of their habitat. I bet you'd find clams lower than birds. I bet most birds are on top and most clams are on the bottom. Not because clams turn to birds, but because birds are lightweight and they float and they can fly around till they run out of gas, and clams are already at the bottom. I bet they're sorted based upon their habitat. These guys, they already live at the bottom. Of course, they're the first ones buried. Birds don't live in the water at all. So I think you'd find the fossils can be explained. They're sorted based upon their habitat, based upon their body density. Clams are heavier per cubic centimeter than birds. I bet they're sorted based upon their mobility. Clams can't run very fast. I bet they're sorted based upon their intelligence. As far as anybody knows, clams aren't too smart. So I think there's another way to explain the sorting of the fossils, if there is any, by one of those four methods. But you guys think if it's lower, therefore it turned into the one above it. This is the faulty logic. I don't see how you're ever going to get it, but it's simply not true. Digging around to find a missing link is insane. The whole chain is missing. There is no missing link. Dinosaur bird link, fossil flap. They blew it. It's not a missing link at all. There's no chain. Birds always make baby birds. Clams always make baby clams. There are no exceptions. You guys believe it happened, and I admire your faith, but that's not science. Okay?
Kent, thank you for that response, and great audience Q&A. We got to end it somewhere, and we are well over the hour-and-a-half mark now, and we still have some concluding thoughts, concluding words. So as we do the concluding thoughts, Wade and Kent, I have created another poll, and the title of it is, let me just pull it up here for people to vote as, where is it? Okay. So the question is biological evolution any more convincing now that the debate is over? Okay, so we'll give people the opportunity to vote as Wade and Kent give their concluding remarks, final thoughts, final words, so on and so forth. So Wade, we'll start with you. You've got up to 5 minutes. Of course, you don't have to use it all, but up to 5 minutes. Go ahead.
5 minutes. That might be, let's say, so. Like this. So maybe I won't go through all this to save a little bit of time, but this was again John Perry. This video, so stated casually, John Perry basically defines with more clarity exactly what evolution is, or how we explain evolution. All these points. These 8 points, descent with modification, struggle for existence, natural selection, or differential survival. And I'm not going to go through all these points just for sake of time, but if you'll notice with each of these, they are scientific, they are observable, they are testable. Okay, so evolution is science. It doesn't require any faith. Let's see, I think so. Quote from Carl Sagan. One of the saddest lessons in history is this: if we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. I think those words really resonate with me. There's not going to be any evidence that will ever convince Kent, because he's just been captured by his own bamboozle. I've been recently watching Arn Ra created some 30 video playlist, which disprove Kent's supposed lies in the textbook, and it just kind of shows a pattern of deception and logical fallacies and lies. There's also another really great documentary on YouTube called "The Weakness of Kent Hovind."
Well, wait, I'm gonna stop you there, because I don't want this to. It's been a great debate, and we really don't want to start throwing in ad homs and stuff like that. So we're gonna keep it respectful, and I'm not gonna allow that on my channel. So
okay. Yeah, no,
we're gonna wrap it up there, unless you had some final words. But as host and moderator, I want to keep this respectful to the debaters. So
okay.
you wanted to.
My last words is that's up to you. Do your own research. Went for me, changing my mind, unless the motto for the scientific society is nullius in verba, which is Latin for no one's word. So don't take my word for it. Find out for yourself. That's all I'll say.
Okay. And before we hand it to Kent, the results of the poll is in. Wade, you sure you want to hear the results?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I don't want to break your heart, but so the question is biological evolution any more convincing now that the debate is over? And 85% say no, 15% say yes. So we've got a majority opinion there, Wade, but we still got 5 minutes.
Well, hold on a second, though. This is really interesting because we increased. So if we look at before and after, we went from 12% to 15% siding with evolution. So I was able to convince some people. However, Kent was unable to convince anybody. That's great.
Hey, well, you know what? We still got another 5 minutes for people to vote. So I appreciate everybody voting and making this a little more interesting with the poll. So, Kent, we're going to hand it over to you, brother. You got 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Wade, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate the quote by Carl Sagan. That's interesting. He is a classic example of someone who has been bamboozled and bamboozles others. And you have been bamboozled. You believe that you are related to a snail, but you offered no evidence for that. Nobody's ever seen a snail produce a non-snail or a human produce a non-human nobody's ever seen any of these intermediates that would have to be trillions of them. They draw lines on paper, and that is supposed to be the evidence. You drew a line between mammals and birds, and I'm supposed to believe it happened just because you drew a line on paper. I wish you would stop and think. You finally stopped and analyzed the stupid religion of Mormonism, and it is insanely dumb, okay? And I'm glad you got out of it. But you jumped out of the pot into the frying pan. You're still in a dumb religion called evolution. Bible says, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God to an image made like to corruptible man and birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. God gave them up. They worshiped and served the creature more than the creator. I wish you would see it. For this cause, God gave them up. Wait, I'm going to pray for you. I hope God hasn't given up on you. Maybe you've deliberately rejected him, but you have been bamboozled. Romans 1 tells us God will judge the people of the world. They think they're wise, but God gave them up. It's a slippery slope. The fool said in his heart, there's no God. Wait, you're going to have one of these rocks one of these days over your dead carcass, a tombstone. This guy claimed he was an atheist. Well, God doesn't believe in atheists. If you died today, Wade, where would you go? You will be dead for a long time. I believe God made the world. I think he owns it. I think he makes the rules, and we're all guilty of breaking his rules. He gave 10 simple commandments. Don't bear false witness. Don't lie. I'd be willing to bet $5. You've lied. I have lied. He said, thou shalt not steal. I'd be willing to bet $5. You've stolen things. So have I. God's going to judge the wicked. He's angry. We're going to be punished unless you find a substitute. And Jesus Christ is willing and able to substitute. He did for me 53 years ago, took my sins, paid for them. Praise God, okay? I'm going to have a little dash between two dates on a rock someday. So are you. I would encourage everybody here to get away from the stupid TV and especially the dumb video games and stop and think. There's going to be a tombstone with your name on it someday. You already know the first date. You don't know the last. Could be today. You don't know. There's some idiots out there driving. Alabama does not have IQ tests to drive. You could get killed on our highways down here. If you died today, where are you going? And if what are you doing with your dash between those dates? What on earth are you doing, for heaven's sake? I'd like to see everybody give their heart to the Lord, get saved, and join in the service of God for the rest of your life. That's what I'm trying to do. Come on down, visit us at Dinosaur Adventureland in Lenox, Alabama. It's all free. You can spend the night. After about 2 nights, we're going to give you a hammer, put you to work. Whole place built by volunteers and donations, and it is just amazingly fun down here. Wade, please come. I want to give you a tour. You'll love it down here. Thank you. All right, bye.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for the concluding statements, and that's 2 hours. So thank you to the both of you for the time. I know how busy I'm sure you both are. So again, to the audience, thank you so much. And I guess right before we shut it down, the final poll is 86% no, 14% yes. So there we go. We had a lively chat. it was fun. So I'm gonna let you, both of you get some sleep. Thank you for making it a debate to remember. So I'm gonna let you both get out of here. I'm gonna stick around for about another minute or two, just kind of going over some reminders to everybody. But again, Kent, Wade, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, there we go. Another one in the books. Definitely an interesting debate. A ton of fun. And they had a debate a couple months ago, and now this was the rematch, and it certainly didn't disappoint. So to Blaster Master 80, no, there were no personal attacks against anybody, which is why in the final seconds of that closing statement is why I stopped it. So, we try to keep these debates sophisticated. So I do appreciate your opinion, though. Okay, well, I do want to remind everybody that we've got Matt Slick and Otis Lewis tomorrow night. So it's been a big week of debates. As always, here we are doing our best, working full time to bring you the best content, the best debates on all topics: creation, evolution, soteriology, theology, philosophy, morality, you name it, the nature of God. So tomorrow should be a ton of fun. If you're not yet subscribed, but you love debates, interviews, videos, books, we've got books, articles, we've got it all. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Our team web designer is currently updating the site. So I would guess in the next week, the site should be fully updated. And we are adding a ton of content to the website, guys. And the other debate that we had, which is a hot topic. So I'm going to stay as neutral as possible here and not comment on it specifically. But do endogenous retroviruses provide evidence for evolution? So I debated Taylor from the Snake Was Right YouTube channel a few nights ago. Very technical debate, lots of fun. So if you have not yet seen that one, please check it out. I believe this was actually our 173rd debate now that we've hosted here. So again, if you're a debate addict like myself, I'm just looking at the chat. I'm glad you all had as much fun as I did. So but if you guys are as much of a debate addict as myself, you've got now between 170 and 173 debates to keep you busy. We've also got exclusive material over on Patreon. So if you have not yet checked out Patreon, for as little as $1 a month, you can become a Stand for Truth Ministries supporter and financial backer, and you can gain access to tons of exclusive Patreon content. So the last thing I do want to mention is next week we do have our 2-day Slaying Heresy event. Day 1, Countering the Jehovah's Witnesses with Kelly Powers, and day 2, Defending the Trinity and debunking objections, arguments to the Trinity. We're going to be making both of these events day 1 and day 2 interactive with the live chat. So bring your questions, guys, bring your criticisms, your objections. We are going to have a ton of fun. So Kelly Powers, day 1, Anthony Rogers, day 2. And I think that's pretty much it. Redefine Living, thank you as well, brother. Guys, thank you so much for all the questions that came in. We try to cut these evolution debate challenge debates off around the 2-hour mark, and since we typically get between 200 and 400 people live for these, we get a ton of great questions that come in, and unfortunately we can't quite get to them all, but because of you guys, we always have a fantastic audience Q&A, so I do appreciate that. Karen Weiss, thank you so much. Epic lineup. Yes, I am extremely excited for what we have in store for the rest of the year. As a matter of fact, the debate that we set now over a month ago, this is going to be an epic debate on soteriology between 2 powerhouses, you could say, in the soteriology world. Robert Wilkin and Robert Sungenis both have written extensively on this topic. So they are going to be debating on June 9th, I believe it is. Just check the event section. And the thesis specifically is going to be focusing on Romans 2:13. But the bigger picture of the debate is essentially, does the Bible teach salvation by faith alone or salvation by faith plus works? So I'm really, really pumped for that one. And I think that's about it. I don't think there's any after shows or anything tonight. Honesty Angel, good to see you, sister. Do you have your wrench? I can't really see from the StreamYard itself. So I hope you do. And yes, we can definitely see you. Mitchell, I appreciate the super chat that came in. Guys, a lot of super stickers, super chats that came in. Not really with any questions, just kind of showing some love. George Bond mentioned that he's having pizza for breakfast or lunch. No better way to start the day than that. So George, thank you for those super chats, guys. You're the life and the blood of this channel, so I appreciate it. And share around these debates. The truth is important, and we're putting on a ton of debates, especially creation versus evolution debates, as critical thinking is very important. And that's why we host these types of debates, because, we want to get people in here that have differing views. And oftentimes we want to get into some of the the technical topics, and just kind of discuss those differences in a professional way. So again, the Synagogue, good to see you, brother. CJ's had a ton of fantastic debates on this channel, including a debate recently with Dr. Leighton Flowers on total inability. Please check that out. That debate was a ton of fun. And CJ, we're going to have to get you some more debates coming up for the summer, brother. So again, Jerome, good to see you, my man. And DC. Yeah, you know what? Sometimes as moderator, I got to step in and be adamant, because I want to make sure these are sophisticated. And I also want to make sure that the debaters, no matter who they are feeling respected and also comfortable on this platform. I don't want them to feel uncomfortable. So anyways, I think that's about it. That's about wraps it up. And again, thank you so much. Tune in tomorrow for another epic debate. Matt Slick, Otis Lewis. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. Stand for Truth is out.